Good morning. I don't have a habit of bringing a piece of paper with me, but I have a couple of points that I definitely would like to cover during this presentation. So my name is Johan Witters. I used to work for Alcatel, later Alcatel-Lucent. Now we were bought by Nokia. And it's a real pleasure and honor for me to be here today with you. Looking back, I was here the first time with Exponential-e at a similar event introducing VPLS. So I was also part of that team. And it has been always a pleasure for me to work with Exponential-e. The fact that I'm down to earth, I think helps quite a bit in working with you guys. And I think 2 points that stand out for me with respect to Exponential-e is their strive for innovation. And the other thing I call customer first. So these are 2 things I keep always in mind when I'm discussing with Exponential-e. Now let's get to the topic. Who amongst you is familiar with the abbreviation SDN? Okay. NFV? Okay, also a couple. And SD1? Okay, good. In all honesty, I have to say I'm around for a long time in industry, which is another way of saying that I'm getting old. I never seen such a drive behind something. So I think you really need to pay attention to SD1. Okay, I will cover a bit on SD1, and Chris is going to then take it further. One more thing to explain. You will see Nokia on there, and you will see Nuage Networks. So what did we do? Actually, 4 years ago, we founded a 100% owned company called Nuage Networks. Why did we do that? Well, we wanted to bring into one company together wide area networking people, so technology networking people, together with IT people from IBM, HP, and so on. Okay, and that company was headquartered out of the Valley. And in order to attract new people in the Valley, you must have a sexy new brand. So that's why we called it Nuage Networks. And that brand is still kept because it has a good brand image in the market. So that's basically Nokia and Nuage Networks. Okay. The first thing to say is the following. A week ago, there was in Barcelona a Gartner Summit, where I also was. There were like 6,000 people, of which roughly 2,000 CIOs. Now, a couple of the buzzwords of that event were ecosystem, cloud, and digital. So from an enterprise perspective, moving to that digital world in order to grow the business, be more profitable, and things like that, is very key in today's market. And that has a lot of consequences on the way that we are doing business, but also the way that we are going to do networking. Okay? If you come to think of it, it was actually alluded already in John's presentation, MPLS is like 15 years old, which is actually quite a long time if you think on it, because are we still able to do the things that we need to do today as opposed to 15 years? Not saying that there is anything bad, but there are a number of things which have changed with respect to 15 years ago, and I will try to cover these also. Okay, so 2 quotes in there. Typically in the industry, some of those terms are, let's say, fluffy and not always well defined, so that's one of the reasons why I try to put them on a slide. But I think all of us in this room have an understanding of what consumerization means and what a digital enterprise means. But these are actually 2 things that are driving us, okay? We want to make networking actually as easy as this device, because here you have apps under your control, you can download it, you can access them immediately. That's what we want to get out of the networking and access to applications over the networking. So that's how far basically we want to go. So IT must align with business. And we in the industry, we are great in using lots of acronyms. So SD, software defined. And I have two software-defined abbreviations on here, which I will come and explain later on. So the first one is software-defined wide area network, and the second one is software-defined data center. So there are a number of drivers behind this, like I said, to make it consumable, to make sure that you get to the digital enterprise. And that has consequence in two areas. And both of them Exponential-e is covering today, okay? It has a consequence in the data center, because also the data center must be much more agile, okay? And that's one thing that we have been working together with Exponential-e over the last years. And then the other more recent one is software-defined wide area networking. Okay, what is NFV? Network Function Virtualization. That's a thing that was driven by Verizon, AT&T, BT, the big service provider basically. And they wanted to make telco applications, like for example, unified messaging, IM and things like that, much more flexible and scalable. So have them in software, run on commodity platforms and things like that, okay? So that still is a big thing, but that's today more, let's say, telco-oriented. However, the variant of this is actually also what Exponential-e is offering in their data center, namely to host applications which you guys can consume. You could also, let's say that falls under network function virtualization, although in the strict sense of the word, NFV comes from that initiative of those big telco providers. So that's network function virtualization. And remember, when I refer to cloud and applications in cloud, that is actually what we have in mind with that, okay? I'm not going to dwell too much anymore on this in this presentation. Then the second thing, did I do something wrong here? Okay. Sorry, I think I went one slide. Okay, there is something wrong here. I thought I changed it. So you have two things. Network function virtualization is what I explained. It's targeting towards the network. And then SDN, which stands for software-defined networking. Software-defined networking is actually, if you look at today's networks, the control and the data plane is typically in one and the same router or in one and the same network, okay? Which is still very much okay, and which will be around for quite some years to come. However, what people are looking into is to decouple the control from the data plane. And then you can work with software controllers who, let's say, direct the network what to do with traffic, okay? That's software-defined networking. And you see today two use cases, which I alluded to in one of the previous slides. One is the application in the data center, and the second one is the application into the wide area network. So SDN in the data center, what does it mean? Well, in the data centers, before you had like VMware, everything was rather, let's say, static. And then you had the first things on virtualization. And virtualization in the data center actually means that you can have multiple virtual machines or multiple applications running on one and the same server, which saves you cost from a hardware perspective because you can do more than one thing on the same server, which is great, okay? Now, the thing which was left behind was actually the networking, okay? Because the networking was still manual, okay? And it's perhaps slightly exaggerated here, but especially in big data centers, this is the bottleneck. So the more changes you have in the data center with respect to new applications, the bigger the data center is, the more distributed the data center is, the more that this is the bottleneck. So the virtual machines can be installed in a matter of seconds, but doing the networking, that it has become a bottleneck in many data centers. And that is actually the first thing that we addressed with our Nuage Networks division. That is basically, we introduced the concept of an SDN controller. Now that SDN controller, for your information, that's based on the same software which runs on the 7750, which are the PEs that Exponential-e has in their network. So it is a proven and tested technology slash software that we're using. So we have the controller. Now what does the controller do? The controller detects that a virtual machine has been placed. The controller checks with the upper layer, with the orchestration layer, what should I do? He gets the message back, and then in an automated way, the connectivity is provided to those virtual machines. So again, using the analogy, with me traveling quite a bit lately, when I land somewhere, I put this device back on, and I have immediately connectivity. So the analogy is, it is as if the network is following me. Okay, there is roaming behind and so on, but for the analogy, I have connectivity everywhere, so it is as if the network is following. And that concept we apply actually here. So wherever the virtual machine is, even if it moves, the networking follows, because we are using overlay techniques, VXLAN tunnels to make this happen, okay? So that is the concept of SDN in a data center, which Exponential-e has up and running. Now, I'm going to give you a sneak preview on SD1, because what we are solving here is automated connectivity using overlay in the data center. What stops us from going to the customer premises? Let's assume that these servers or x86 hardware is not in the data center anymore, but it is now at customer premises in one of the branch locations or headquarters. Wouldn't the same be just, couldn't we just apply the same? And that's actually what we're doing with software-defined one, what Chris is going to, let's say, expand on. So the main thing is controller, SDN controller, controlling the underlay, and in the underlay we are using VXLAN overlay tunnels to provide the connectivity. Okay, so I have alluded to this a couple of times, because actually what we are seeing is we have become impatient, basically, or even more impatient, because we are used to, as a, let's say, private person, we are used to this device and having everything under control. And then the next day we come in the office and we need to have changes to the networking, to the applications, so whatever. And then typically there's a long period before everything is up and running. Okay, there has been quite some improvements there, but it's not like immediately, in a matter of seconds. So, and you might ask yourself, well, why can't MPLS solve that? Well, the thing to remember is, like I said, MPLS was invented 15 years ago. And there are two key differences with now. There are more, but there are two main things. The first one is cloud didn't exist. So MPLS did not need to take into account cloud. And the second thing is the dynamic / agility in enterprises. 15 years ago, business was much more stable. You had a network, you connected a number of sites, and it stayed like that, and you needed to add. But now, there's much more change in sites. If you listen, for example, to presentations like that from Adidas, for example, they want, of course they are sponsoring big sports events, they want to open a pop-up shop for 2 hours, for 2 days, for 2 weeks. So that flexibility, that agility wasn't there like 15 years ago. And these are 2 points that we are addressing with software-defined wide area networking. Now, where did it actually start? It started with the concept of hybrid one. And hybrid one is basically, instead of having one uplink, I'm going to choose for 2 uplinks. One can be an MPLS one, and the second one can be an internet access. There has been quite a bit of drive behind that in the industry. Why? Because in a number of countries, there is a significant price difference between MPLS uplink and an internet access uplink. It's not the same in all countries in Europe. There are some where the price is almost the same. There are others where the price can be a factor of 9. So the bigger the difference, the more focus there is. And again, you see some companies like Adidas, Coca-Cola, and so on, going for that, but they can do that themselves. Okay? They have a large IT staff and they can do that themselves. So what we are covering with SD1 is exactly also that. So we are solving that and making that hybrid one, again, much more consumable for you guys. So basically, SD1 is about a controller, Now, what is the benefit of a controller? That you have a central place where you can change policies. Okay? An Exponential-e can give you, via a portal, access to it, such that you will have much more agile, flexible control of your own destiny, of your own network, basically. Okay? The rest, I think that Chris is going to cover in more depth. So, why does it matter? I'll leave you to read the stats for yourself, but I think one of the key things that you have to keep in mind, and it's going to be much more clear out of the video that Chris is going to show, is to make networking consumable. And why do you have to make networking much more consumable? Because the business problem that we are addressing is easy access to your applications wherever they are, in your data center, in Exponential-e's data center, or in Amazon or Google, wherever. Okay, that's the business problem that we are trying to solve. And actually, it's perhaps a bit too market-oriented, but what we are saying is not about connectivity anymore. What we mean is, it's about all these previous points. We want you to be able to have easy access, to do things yourself, to work on any underlay, to be able to connect to any type of cloud. These are the key points that we wanted to address. And I'm happy to say that together we had 5 or 6 weeks ago, I think, in Paris, there was the first SD-WAN summit, and Exponential-e did their press release announcing the availability of SD-WAN. And I'm going to pass the word to you. Thank you.